Why do you fucking think? Why are there so many black people in Far Cry 5? Because of people like you writing for places like Vice News complaining about the lack of representation of black people in literally everything. After spending a few weeks with Far Cry 5, I've come to the regretful conclusion that there are way too many black people in this game. What's the number? I mean, you constantly go, oh, we need black representation. Representation matters. Oh, now there are too many. How many is too many? And how many is not enough? You're going to start giving us a number. You know, us white people. It's not that I dislike black people. In fiction or in real life, full disclosure, I am black. It's just for a series that prides itself on realism, my experiences of constantly bumping into assault rifle toting black people in the forests of Montana seems a tad unrealistic. Yeah, okay, I guess you really feel how the Kingdom Come Deliverance folks feel now, don't you? You kind of really understand their problem with you guys. And when I say you guys, I mean progressives. I don't mean black people. I love the complaint about realism here. According to the 2016 census, black people make up just over 0.5% of the population in Montana. Yeah, but if they weren't heavily overrepresented in the game, that'd be racist. There are only about 6,000 black people in the entire state. So Montana is a white ethno-state, is what you're saying. Does Far Cry expect me to believe that all of them moved to Hope County? The developers have tried to explain this by saying that the cult that appears as the main enemy in the game has gotten everyone, regardless of colour, to join, but that doesn't account for the fact that even non-cultists are disproportionately black. Well, this is what happens when you have an interest group that literally spends all their day on Twitter shaming developers for not including enough black people, whether it makes fucking sense or not. Stranger still is that you can go through the entire game without running into a Native American. At 6.6% of the state's population, Native Americans represent a much larger community than black people, and an inclusion of a prominent Native character or two would probably make it feel more like Montana. Well, that just goes to show you everything you need to know about the deforming and disproportionate effect that far-left activists are having on video games and video game culture, doesn't it? They don't represent reality. They don't represent certain minority populations who are actually not being represented when it would be appropriate. They're actually making it so that people who it's not appropriate to represent are being represented because that's their particular special interest. The strained diversity of the cast may just be a sign that Ubisoft, like a lot of the game industry, is starting to make some occasionally awkward efforts at inclusion. Yeah, they're afraid of just getting castigated on social media by a bunch of SJW howlers. They don't know what to do, really, but they're like, oh, well, you need more representation of people of colour. Okay, we'll put black people in. Wait, there's no black people in Montana. Well, fuck us. What the fuck are we supposed to do? So in Far Cry 3, you play as a white man who fights his way out of a fictional South Pacific island. This story format has led to a lot of gamers, really, criticising the series as being racist, really, and perhaps spurring the concern among some white gamers that Far Cry 5 would give white people the violent, savage treatment. I don't give a shit about that whatsoever. You go ahead and make white people violent savages in your Far Cry game all you want. I mean, I played Far Cry 4, I haven't played the other ones, and I loved fucking Pagan Min. You know, there were loads of people of colour there, because it was set somewhere in the Himalayas. Creative director Dan Hay is aware of the criticism of past Far Cry games. There were some folks who were basically communicating that, hey, this is like the Great White Hope going in and saving these folks, he said in an interview with Vice News. Well, there's your first mistake, Dan, doing an interview with Vice News. I think that what we did is looked at that and said to ourselves, how do we as a brand make sure that as we go into the future, we're building it so the main character is not just a prescribed character? How do we make it so that we're actually making it so you can build the character yourself and it could be you if you want? I don't give a shit, to be honest. I mean, Far Cry is like a story-based game. Therefore, if you create whichever fucking protagonist you want, there are untold numbers of games in which you get to create your own protagonist, like sandbox games, where you get to create your own protagonist, and you can make it however the fuck you like. And most people make them weirdly deformed, just so you know. Personally, I always just go for the default, whatever the basic thing is, I just click start. I do not give a shit what my character looks like. The problem with this immersive experience is that it occasionally breaks down if you don't pick a white avatar, really. At one point in the game, if you come across a woman who looks you up and down and asks if you are Italian, insinuating that Italians are thieves. But I'd customised my avatar to be a woman with dark skin, a short afro, not really an appearance that would scream Italian to a rural Montanan. Well, that's a bit of a prejudicial judgment. They might really not know what an Italian or black person is. It's as though the writers assume that most players would pick a white character. Whoa, hold your horses there. The Italians have not gained admission into the white race. There is a distinct amount of genetic imperialism we need to do on the Italians before they qualify as being white. It's a frustrating oversight because Far Cry 5 does otherwise make an effort to immerse the player. Your avatar does not have a name, instead other characters call you Rookie or Deputy. Characters refer to you using gender-appropriate and occasionally gender-neutral pronouns, and this makes the Italian line all the more annoying because it makes it clear that the developers did have the topic of racism on their minds when they were creating the game, or they were just fully and properly classifying Italians as people of colour. But instead of taking it seriously, they used it for an arbitrary joke. Well, I think you've misinterpreted this, my friend. In this context, slapping a bunch of black characters into the game without explanation feels not only like tokenization, which it absolutely is, but also a deliberate avoidance of a real element of American life, one that might have made the game more interesting. It's more just to shut you guys up. Far lefties are going to be like, well, we need lots of black people in your game, otherwise you're a racist. And okay, here's thousands of black people. Why? Don't know, it doesn't make sense. There are more black people on a game than there actually exist in Montana, but here you go, this is what you wanted. Leave us alone. Oh no, wait, we're going to write articles saying, no, wait, this is way over-representation of black people. You really haven't thought this through. So, holy shit, they just can't win, can they? Interestingly, they then start complaining that the game isn't fun, or at least not as fun as Far Cry 4. And I've got to say, Far Cry 4 was really decent. I really enjoyed it. So it takes place in the fictional South Asian country of Kirat, which has been taken over by a bloodthirsty dictator, which is Pagan Min, an amazingly charismatic character. As the game progresses, you realise that American interference caused the country to fall into chaos in the first place. Then there's direct jabs at American foreign policy, courtesy of a pirate radio station, who jokes about then President Obama winning the Nobel Peace Prize, despite ordering drone strikes like they're going out of style. After that level of sauciness, Far Cry 5 comes off about spices and oatmeal sandwich. That's not to say it isn't fun, it is. And the fact that Ubisoft is listening to and considering the criticism they've got in the past is worthy of some praise. But their effort to address the criticism falls flat. It's like, yeah, but that's because this is the point. If you pander to a minority, not racial, just a minority, a small number, of loud whiners on Twitter who whine from their own particular ideological perspective that literally no one else cares about, especially not the developers, or at least they shouldn't, for fear of getting some sort of Twitterati backlash, then yes, they will end up making a game that is just, as you say, a subjectively less fun thing to play, even though it might be more diverse. But hey, at least Far Cry 5's ham-fisted appeal to diversity via dumping black characters onto the screen is not offensive per se. Anyone who's lived in America would recognise the country that appears in Far Cry 5 is inauthentic. It's disappointing that realism in this video game was not limited by graphical limitations or writing talent, but by timidness. Or maybe you can thank the far left hate mobs that will descend on any publisher of anything who doesn't toe the line. And I tell you what, right, Ubisoft and anyone else who is thinking about making any kind of media and you're not sure how to avoid this problem, I can tell you right now exactly what you do. You just tell them to get fucked. When they say, but what are you going to do about diversity and inclusion and representation and all that, you say, we're not. And if you don't like it, don't buy it. And it will not impact your sales one bit. In fact, it might actually make them go through the roof because you'll cause a huge amount of controversy. Lots more people will know about your game through all this free press. And lots of people will say, I'm going to buy that game just to piss off these fucking regressive activists.